Flight attendant disrespects black woman. Then she flashes her undercover FAA badge. A packed terminal at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport buzzes with impatient travelers, neon signs reflecting off polished floors. In the middle of the crowd, a woman wearing simple jeans and a worn jacket stands calmly, her gaze fixed on the gate. Her name is Serena Lewis, and although she appears to be just another passenger heading to Chicago, she carries a secret that could shock the entire airline. Tension ripples in the air, fueled by routine delays and the hushed gripes of irritated flyers. Beneath that humdrum surface, an extraordinary story is about to explode, proving no one is ever just what they seem. Serena Lewis took a measured breath as she approached the Majestic Skies Airlines check-in counter. She'd been down this road countless times, traveling under a mundane alias for her job. Yet this assignment felt different. Maybe it was the uneasy flutter in her chest or the earlier phone call from her supervisor, Agent Castillo, reminding her to stay vigilant. She was usually unflappable. Years of specialized training did that to a person, but something about today didn't sit right with her. The terminal was exceptionally crowded, even for Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, one of the busiest airports in the world. Lines curled around stanchions, voices rose over the background of boarding announcements, and the occasional child's cry punctuated the thrumming energy of tense travelers. Thanks to multiple weather disturbances across the East Coast, flights were being shuffled, cancelled, and delayed, leaving passengers on edge. A sense of collective exasperation hung in the air, like a cloud before a storm. Serena clutched a small black backpack that seemed unremarkable from the outside. Inside, it held her carefully curated set of identification documents, none of which bore her true name. She also had a concealed device that connected her directly to the Department of Homeland Security's secure lines. Her mission was strictly classified, and no one knew she was actually an undercover agent. Not even her older brother, who believed she worked for a logistics company, or her mother, who thought she had a dull job in some government office. She'd grown adept at weaving half-truths into her personal life, but the weight of those lies pressed down on her soul whenever she stood alone in a crowd. Walking up to the check-in kiosk, Serena scanned the restless faces around her. Some showed fatigue, others mild frustration. A tall man in a business suit rattled away on his smartphone, glancing at her with a fleeting curiosity. Nothing unusual. She exhaled quietly, reminding herself that her cover identity this time was Layla Brooks, a freelance consultant traveling to Chicago to meet a prospective client. Majestic Skies Airlines had a flight leaving in 90 minutes. She was booked on that. Well, Layla Brooks was. Her biggest concern right now was not whether she'd board, but that she might be forced to show her real credentials. That was always a last resort, because it risked blowing her cover if any unscrupulous eyes happened to catch a glimpse. However, her assignment overshadowed personal caution. She had reason to believe a very important person, connected to a suspected extremist cell, was traveling on the same flight. Her mission was to quietly observe and, if necessary, intervene. Intelligence suggested the suspect might attempt to meet an accomplice in Chicago, smuggling sensitive data. She stepped up to the kiosk, typed in her booking reference, and entered the requested info. The screen blinked, flickered, and then spat out the words, "Please see an attendant." She frowned slightly. This wasn't uncommon. Sometimes the kiosk simply refused to read passport information correctly, or the name mismatch triggered an extra layer of checks. Nonetheless, a knot formed in her gut. She attempted the kiosk once more. The same message repeated itself. Sighing, she retrieved her printout and queued for the manned check-in desk. A middle-aged airline employee with wire rim glasses waved her forward. His name tag read, T. Wilkinson. His eyes flicked between the line of weary travelers and Serena's expression. She held out her itinerary. "Good afternoon," Serena said calmly. "I'm checking in for flight 2278 to Chicago." "Afternoon," the employee replied, tapping his keyboard. He scanned the printed itinerary. "Layla Brooks, correct?" "Yes, that's me." Wilkinson pressed his lips together, the glow of the monitor reflecting off his glasses. My system is asking for a second form of ID. Do you have another government-issued ID with you?" Serena kept her face impassive. She'd prepared for the possibility. "Sure, here's my driver's license." She passed over the forged license that matched her alias. The department's forgeries were generally flawless, but she could never predict how each airline system might react. Wilkinson placed the ID under a tiny magnifying device. A tense moment followed as he scrutinized it. Serena's heart picked up speed, but she retained her poised exterior. After what felt like a small eternity, Wilkinson nodded and typed some more. "Let me just finalize the check-in," he said. "I'll have your boarding pass in a moment." She exhaled discreetly. So far, so good. She glanced at her watch, an unremarkable black band that syncs to DHS systems but appeared to be a simple digital watch. No pings or urgent updates, so presumably the suspect had not arrived or triggered any scanners yet. She tapped her foot, thinking about how tonight she'd planned to meet her longtime friend, Simone, in Chicago. She'd told Simone she'd be in town for consulting work, but had tried to keep the visit flexible. Simone wanted them to catch up, maybe attend a late dinner together. Serena desperately missed normal life. In her line of work, normal never lasted long. Still, the chance to see an old friend was one of life's few pleasures she could cling to. Wilkinson squinted at the screen again, his frown deepened, and he gestured for a female colleague to come over. The colleague, sporting a name tag that read Laurel, reviewed the display. They exchanged hushed tones Serena couldn't quite catch. Concern blossomed in her chest. She glanced around. A small crowd was forming behind her, each passenger impatiently waiting for their turn. Shifting from foot to foot, some scowled at her for holding up the line. Finally, Laurel turned to Serena, her expression firm. "Miss Brooks," she began, "we're having difficulty verifying your booking details. There seems to be a discrepancy in our system. Could you please wait off to the side while we resolve this?" Serena forced a polite smile. "Is it something I can clear up right now? I have a valid ticket and my ID. Maybe it's just the weather messing with the system." Laurel's lips tightened. "I'm sorry, but I can't discuss this right here. Please step aside." The knot in Serena's gut tightened. This was more than a system glitch. As an undercover DHS agent, she'd been trained to recognize changes in body language and tone that signaled potential conflict. Laurel seemed to be reading from a script of forced politeness. Wilkinson avoided Serena's eyes entirely, focusing intently on his screen, as if he had never seen such an anomaly before. Serena stepped to the side, feeling a flicker of tension. She told herself not to panic. The mission was still on track. She would find a way to board that flight. Her priority was the suspect, not her personal comfort. If needed, she'd reveal her credentials to a supervisor. But that was absolutely last resort. She decided to give them a few minutes to sort things out, but not too long. Every moment counted for her mission. Waiting off to the side gave Serena the opportunity to watch the employees more closely. Laurel picked up a phone by the desk and spoke in hushed tones, glancing at Serena occasionally. Wilkinson tapped away at the keyboard as if searching for something else. A passing gate agent caught sight of the minor commotion and paused to inquire. At one point, Laurel handed the phone to Wilkinson, who nodded vigorously. The conversation was short, the words urgent. Serena had been in enough stakeouts to realize a confrontation was brewing. She scanned the rest of the check-in area for anything suspicious. Standing near a large planter was a tall, bearded man with a heavy coat, odd choice for a mild Atlanta day. He seemed distracted, fiddling with his phone. Another woman, early 20s, paced back and forth while checking notifications on her device. Nothing overtly alarming, but Serena's training had taught her that appearances could be deceiving. At length, Laurel replaced the phone on its cradle and walked over to Serena. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to accompany me to a separate area for further verification." "Separate area?" Serena repeated, tone measured. "What seems to be the issue exactly?" Laurel's gaze flickered nervously. "We're just doing our due diligence. There's a problem matching your name to the flight manifest. Possibly a reservation glitch. We'd like to handle it privately." A flicker of indignation rose in Serena's chest. She understood security procedures, she practically lived by them, but something felt off. Why would they ask for a private area just for a name mismatch? Usually, that would be resolved by a quick call to the booking agency or an internal system check. Nonetheless, refusing might escalate the situation and draw more attention. And attention was exactly what she didn't need. Serena nodded, slinging her backpack over one shoulder. "Lead the way." They followed a corridor behind the airline desks, emerging in a small office area seldom seen by passengers. A few desks and a cluttered bulletin board lined the walls. The fluorescent lights above flickered faintly, bathing the space in a harsh glow. A single door with a frosted glass panel separated this area from the main terminal hallway. Laurel held the door open for Serena to step inside. Once they were alone, Laurel's tone dropped some of its forced courtesy. "I'm sorry to ask you this, but is there any reason you might be flagged on our system?" Serena raised an eyebrow. "Flagged? I don't see why." "My name is Layla Brooks. I booked this flight last week, and I have my ID." She reached into her bag to produce the itinerary again. "Perhaps you could try checking the database or verifying with the booking site." "I'm sure it's a misunderstanding," Laurel exhaled, her earlier stoicism replaced by weariness. "Look, Miss Brooks, we're used to system glitches. However, your name popped up with a note to request additional review, something about multiple attempts to book under slightly different spellings. That can happen accidentally, but sometimes it indicates suspicious activity." Serena kept her voice steady. "I can assure you it's an error on the booking side. I had to update my details because I moved recently." She let just enough annoyance seep into her voice so she'd sound like any legitimate traveler dealing with the usual airline bureaucracy. Deep down, she was analyzing every word Laurel said. It seemed plausible that the airline system might have flagged the forged ID or the variations of her alias used in prior missions. Laurel sighed. "We typically handle these checks quickly, but considering the heightened travel security alerts lately, we can't be too careful." Serena considered her options. She could make a show of outraged passenger behavior, but that often drew more suspicion. Alternatively, she could remain polite yet firm. She opted for the latter. "I understand. Can we expedite this process? My flight leaves soon." Laurel nodded slowly. "Of course, I'll do what I can. You'll probably need to speak with a supervisor to get final approval to board." She picked up a phone on a side table and dialed an extension. "Hey, Bill, could you come to the side office? We have a passenger with a flagged reservation that needs clearing." Serena heard a muffled response from the other line. Laurel thanked the person and hung up. "He'll be here soon," Laurel said. "In the meantime, can I get you some water?" "I'm fine, thanks," Serena answered. Though her mouth felt parched, tension always had that effect on her. She inwardly repeated her mantra: stay calm, stay focused, adapt to the situation. She had to preserve her alias unless absolutely necessary. It took 5 minutes for Bill, whose name tag read BC Carter, supervisor, to appear. A portly man in his late 40s with salt and pepper hair, he was already shaking his head when he stepped into the small office. One glance at Serena, and he put on a tight-lipped smile. "Miss Brooks, I'm Bill Carter. I handle security verifications here. Let's see what we've got." He motioned for her license and itinerary. She handed them over without protest. He ran them through a small scanner on the desk. The machine beeped, and Serena saw a faint red light flash on the device. Bill typed on a nearby computer, frowned, then typed again. Serena braced herself. "Is there a problem?" Bill leaned back, crossing his arms. "The system is showing a mismatch in the spelling of your name between the license and the flight reservation. The difference is subtle, but we must address it. Also, the date of birth in the system is a single digit off from the ID card." A cold thread of alarm slid through Serena's mind. She'd used the alias Layla consistently, but sometimes data entry errors occurred if the system auto-corrected or if the booking agent made a slip. The date of birth mismatch was a bigger headache. Someone might have typed it incorrectly during a mission-related entry. The question was whether Bill Carter was the type of person to accept a simple excuse or if he would escalate. She forced a small smile. "I did notice the booking agent seemed uncertain about my details when we were finalizing the ticket. She typed them manually. Maybe that's where the one-digit discrepancy happened. If you look at the ID, everything is correct for me. The name, the photo, the license number. This must be a data entry error. I'm willing to provide additional documents, like my credit card, if that helps." Bill looked unconvinced. "Mistakes happen, sure, but given the security climate, I can't just wave you through. And there's another point. Our system logs show another booking earlier in the month under Layla Brook, without these for the same route." Serena realized that might be from a dummy reservation DHS had created to get a sense of flight patterns. It was standard operational procedure, but now it was biting her from behind. She gritted her teeth inwardly. "I can't speak to that. I've only booked this flight once." "Maybe it's another passenger with a similar name." Bill's eyes narrowed. "Could be, but we're taught to be extra vigilant. Let me check with the Transportation Security Administration office here. If they can verify you quickly, we'll have you on your way." Serena's pulse quickened. The TSA was not the DHS, but TSA had channels that might inadvertently blow her cover if they probed too deeply. She did have a standard profile in official government databases under her real name, but that was obviously not going to match Layla Brooks. If Bill made enough noise, it was possible TSA might contact the Department of Homeland Security, which could be good or bad. Good if they talked to the right person. Bad if it raised a general alarm. That could jeopardize the entire mission. She had to find a way around this. "I'd appreciate whatever you can do to straighten things out," she said, feigning patience. "But is this all truly necessary? I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just need to get on my flight." Bill held her gaze. "I understand your frustration. Let's just get this resolved. We have a direct line." He went to pick up the phone. At that moment, Serena's own phone buzzed. Carefully, she pulled it out, noticing a text from a secure number. It was Agent Castillo, suspect in terminal. Flight 2278, possibly carrying sensitive data. So her target was indeed here. Time was running out. She looked up to find Bill watching her. She gave a rueful smile. "Sorry, just a text about a work thing." Setting the phone aside, she tried to project a mixture of nervousness and exasperation, typical of a real traveler. Meanwhile, her mind spun. She needed to get out of this office soon if she was to intercept the suspect. Bill dialed a short number and waited. Serena could hear a ringtone. Then he began explaining the situation to someone, presumably at TSA. Laurel hovered in the background, arms folded, her eyes wary. This was clearly an unexpected complication in her otherwise routine shift. A minute later, Bill hung up. "They told me to hold you here until someone from TSA can come verify your documents in person." He paused, studying her. "It might be a while, though. They're short-staffed today." Serena felt adrenaline surge. She was running out of time. Her mission demanded that she be in that gate area, watching for the suspect, not locked in an airline office. She decided she had no choice but to escalate her approach. She turned to Bill, speaking calmly but firmly. "I'd like to request a private conversation. There's something important that you need to know." He raised an eyebrow. "This is a private office." "I mean strictly private," she said, glancing at Laurel. Laurel stiffened. "I'm part of security. If there's an issue, I have the right to be here." Serena chose her words carefully. "I understand, but let's just say, this concerns a matter higher than airline protocol. Is there a supervisor beyond you, Bill?" He stiffened. "I am the immediate supervisor here. My boss is out of state. Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of Laurel. She's my lead on these verifications." Serena stared at them both for a moment. Then she quietly unzipped a hidden pocket inside her backpack and withdrew a small black wallet. It bore no external insignia. With a gentle flick of her finger, she opened it so the DHS badge was visible, though she kept her thumb over identifying details. "I need you to understand something, Mr. Carter. I am an undercover operative with the Department of Homeland Security. I cannot give you more details than that, but I need immediate clearance to board that flight. This is a matter of national security." Bill's eyes widened, Laurel's jaw dropped. Neither spoke for several seconds, stunned. Finally, Bill managed to sputter. "Is this some kind of joke?" Serena locked eyes with him. "I wish it were, but I can't allow you to call TSA or even your corporate security over this. My identity has to remain confidential. Let's just say, I'm not the only person on that flight who requires attention. Please, let me board. We can settle the red tape after." Laurel snatched the wallet, her gaze flicking over the badge. "This doesn't look like an airline or TSA credential. Where's your government ID?" Serena held firm. "That's classified, and it's not something I can show unless absolutely necessary. If you contact the Department of Homeland Security directly, you'll jeopardize an ongoing investigation. People's lives could be at stake." Bill's face reddened. "I'm sorry, but this is too strange. We don't just waive security checks because someone claims they're from DHS. There's a procedure." Serena maintained a level tone. "I understand your position, but if you follow your usual procedure, you'll blow my cover. Do you want that on your conscience if it leads to innocent lives being harmed?" Laurel shook her head. "How do we even know this badge is real? Anyone can buy something off the internet." The frustration built in Serena's chest. She recognized their perspective. They were used to dealing with all kinds of scams and had no reason to trust her. Yet time was ticking. The suspect was likely moving through the terminal. If she missed the flight, the suspect could vanish. She flipped open the wallet again. "See that number? You can call it, but only speak to the name on the back. It's a direct line. No one else. They'll confirm my identity. It will take you 1 or 2 minutes, but we have to be discreet. You cannot announce this to the entire TSA office." Bill grabbed the wallet, turning it around in his hands. This is highly unorthodox, but he seemed less hostile now, more unsure. Laurel watched with suspicion but said nothing, clearly out of her depth. Bill pulled out his cell phone and dialed the number. Serena's stomach clenched. She hoped the right person was on the other end. The department had a dedicated phone line for emergent identity verifications, but if it was busy or if someone untrained answered, this could become a bigger mess. Bill spoke in hushed tones, stepping into the hallway for privacy. Serena heard faint murmurs. She glanced at Laurel, who stared back defiantly. "You know," Serena said softly, "I appreciate the job you do. Security is important. I'm just sorry it had to be this way." Laurel pressed her lips together, momentarily lost for words. "We've had so many threats. It's tough to know who to trust." Serena nodded, resisting the urge to snap that the real threat was out there, boarding the flight while they were stuck in a standoff. She forced herself to remain calm, to stand by the training that had gotten her this far. After what felt like an eternity, Bill reappeared, looking slightly pale. He handed the wallet back to Serena, his expression sheepish. "I spoke to someone who confirmed your affiliation. They said to let you proceed discreetly, without further calls to TSA or local law enforcement. But I still have to check something. Does your name on file?" "It doesn't matter," Serena interjected. "You heard the directive. My alias must stay intact. That's the point of being undercover." He swallowed. "Understood. Is Majestic Skies in any danger?" "Not if I get on that flight," she said. "Now please, let me board. We're wasting time." Laurel and Bill exchanged a long, uncertain look. Finally, Bill sighed. "I'll walk you back to the check-in and personally issue your boarding pass. We won't mention this to anyone else." Relief coursed through Serena. She slipped the badge wallet back into her hidden pocket, then slung the backpack over her shoulder. "Thank you," she said quietly, letting the sincerity show in her eyes. She could see that Bill was still rattled by the conversation he'd had. The department contact must have made it abundantly clear that obstructing an active Homeland Security operation would land him in dire legal trouble. They left the side office. As they walked back to the check-in counter, Serena felt a surge of urgency. The suspect was likely already on the other side of security or waiting by the gate. Serena needed to identify them before the plane took off. Back at the main check-in counter, Bill kept his word. He bypassed the usual steps and started printing a boarding pass for Layla Brooks. Laurel stood off to the side, arms folded tightly, as if guarding some invisible line between them. Nearby, passengers eyed the commotion, some muttering under their breath about the wait. Then, abruptly, a man in a crisp, Majestic Skies uniform emerged from a nearby corridor. His name tag said Gerald Mason, shift manager. He had a commanding presence, tall with a practiced smile that seemed more for show than genuine warmth. He marched straight up to Bill. "Carter, I heard we have a security concern." "Why are you printing a pass for a flagged passenger?" Mason demanded, voice cutting through the ambient noise. Bill sputtered. Mr. Mason, it's been resolved. Mason's gaze landed on Serena. "You the passenger in question?" Serena stiffened at the hostility in his tone. She kept her voice level. "Yes, there was a misunderstanding, but Mr. Carter has cleared things up." Mason let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Cleared up? Our system flagged you for possible fraud, and now you're just waltzing through?" Bill fidgeted. "It's complicated." "Upper-level instructions, sir." Mason turned back to Serena. His eyes held a mixture of suspicion and something else that Serena recognized as prejudice. She had seen that look many times before in her life. She watched him set his jaw as though forcibly deciding her worth. The gate area grew quiet, passengers sensing a confrontation brewing. "We can't bend the rules for..." Mason paused, eyeing Serena's skin tone, noticing the subtle dreadlocks pinned back from her face. "People who can't provide consistent documentation. I'm sorry, but you'll have to sort this out with TSA. We're not letting you board." Her heart pounded. "Sir, this has already been handled. Mr. Carter validated my credentials." Mason glared at Bill, who looked terrified. "Carter, you want to keep your job? Then follow protocol." We have no final authorization from the TSA, and I see no reason to grant her a pass just because she, Serena, cut in, struggling to keep her composure. She had no time for Mason's bigotry or ignorance. Mr. Mason, your supervisor, Bill Carter, has already confirmed everything. There's a directive from who? Let me guess. The big bad government that can't be bothered to show a real ID. I've seen this before. People trying to use phony badges. And since we have zero documentation, the answer is no. Serena swallowed hard. This was exactly the kind of scenario she dreaded. Bill looked powerless, exchanging panicked glances with Laurel, who gave a helpless shrug. The tension in the vicinity was palpable, with other travelers openly gawking. Some had started filming on their phones. Mason sneered, noticing the phone cameras. You folks want to see how we handle potential frauds? Go ahead and record. This is how we ensure our flights are safe. We don't let people with suspicious credentials, especially if they can't even get their name, right, waltz onto our planes. Serena felt an icy wave of anger and humiliation. People were whispering, pointing. She could hear phrases like racial profiling, and she's not even doing anything. Yet the manager clearly felt emboldened by some twisted sense of authority. She glanced at Bill and asked quietly, "Are you really going to let this happen?" Bill lowered his gaze, looking torn. He muttered, "He outranks me." Serena inhaled, her internal voice urging her to remain calm. She was an agent on a mission. She had no time for a drawn-out confrontation, but this man was blocking her from intercepting a potential national security threat. She turned back to Mason. "I'll say this once. I have a right to board that plane. My credentials have been verified at the highest level. If you continue to prevent me from boarding, you'll be interfering with a federal operation." Mason let out a dismissive snort. "Federal operation, my foot. Show me official DHS or FBI or CIA or whatever ID with your name on it. Otherwise, you're not boarding. That's the end of it." Her body tensed. She realized that if she showed her real ID here, in front of all these cameras, her cover would be irreparably blown. The suspect might see it, or the footage could hit social media within minutes. This was precisely the scenario the department wanted to avoid. Nearby passengers were picking sides. A few muttered about overreach by the airline, while others mumbled support for Mason's stance, complaining about security risks. A sudden wave of claustrophobia washed over Serena as the circle of onlookers closed in. This was the moment she dreaded. She could either relent, thus failing her mission, or pull rank in a very public way. Agent Castillo's instructions echoed in her mind. Under no circumstances reveal your identity to the general public. But that directive was second to prevent the suspect from escaping with the data. Her mission was at stake. Serena's voice trembled with barely restrained anger. "You're making a mistake, one that could cost lives." Mason shrugged. "That's not my concern." At that moment, a woman stepped forward from among the onlookers. She was slender, dressed in a conservative business suit with a confident air about her. She flashed a quick ID at Mason, though Serena couldn't see the details from her angle. "Excuse me," the woman said in a crisp tone. "I'm Supervisor Elaine Parker with the TSA. I was informed there was a passenger here requiring additional screening. Is that correct?" Mason turned to her, looking thrown off. "Yes, ma'am. This individual, Miss Brooks, has suspicious credentials. We're not letting her board." Elaine Parker nodded, turning to Serena. "May I speak to you privately, Miss Brooks?" Serena's eyes flickered to Bill, who gave a slight nod as if to say, "Go ahead, you have no choice." She nodded curtly and stepped away from the cameras, beckoning Elaine to follow. They found a relatively quiet corner near a row of unoccupied seats. As soon as they were out of earshot of the crowd, Elaine leaned in, lowering her voice. "We received a flagged call about you, then an urgent call from DHS, referencing code 4472. That's the code for active undercover missions." Serena's pulse slowed marginally. Thank goodness. Elaine was in on it, or at least partially. "Yes," Serena whispered back. "I'm part of an ongoing operation. That man Mason won't let me board and time is running out." Elaine nodded. "I'll confirm your flight status. But you realize there's an enormous commotion. People are filming. Social media might get wind of this. Do you have any idea how we can discreetly resolve it?" Serena's jaw tightened. "I tried. Mason's discriminating against me, partly because I'm black. That's not speculation. You saw how quickly he escalated. Also, he's ignoring his own supervisor's clearance. I'm not sure what else to do, short of pulling out my official ID in front of everyone, which would blow my cover." Elaine pressed her lips together. "All right, let me handle Mason. I have enough rank to override him if necessary. We just need to do it quietly, or the airline might push back. But don't worry, I'm on your side." Relief washed over Serena. "Thank you. Please, hurry." They returned to where Mason was standing, now flanked by Laurel and Bill, as well as a few security guards who had wandered over, drawn by the spectacle. A small ring of cell phone-wielding passengers had formed behind them, like a makeshift audience for a reality TV show. Elaine addressed Mason with professional firmness. "Mr. Mason, I'm Elaine Parker from TSA. We've completed a discreet verification for Miss Brooks. She's clear to board." Mason's eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me, that's not possible. I have no such confirmation from my superiors. The system flagged her." Elaine gave a thin smile. "As you know, federal security measures sometimes supersede airline protocol. We have verified Miss Brooks through the correct channels. You will allow her to proceed to the gate and catch her flight." Mason's face twisted with anger. "I've never heard of you, Miss Parker, and I haven't seen any official notice. For all I know, you're in cahoots with this woman." Elaine's polite veneer cracked. "I can assure you I'm not in cahoots with anyone. We have an ongoing situation, and Miss Brooks is cleared. That's the final word." A hush fell over the nearby crowd. Some started whispering again about racism or the airline's liability. Mason took a menacing step forward, his voice dropping. "I'll be reporting you, Miss Parker, to your superiors. And as for you, Miss Brooks, if that's even your name, don't think this is over. You might slip by today, but I'll make sure, Gerald," Bill hissed, tugging on Mason's sleeve. "Stop." They said, "It's above our pay grade." Elaine reached into her jacket and pulled out a card, handing it to Bill. "Contact that number if you have any questions. Meanwhile, Miss Brooks, follow me to the nearest security checkpoint." She turned to the small group of watchers. "Clear the way, please." At that moment, a passenger in the crowd, a young black woman, raised her voice. "That manager is racist. Y'all saw it. He singled her out just 'cause she's black. This is going on YouTube." A flurry of voices erupted, some echoing her sentiment, others quietly standing by. Several cameras followed Serena and Elaine as they walked away. Mason shouted behind them, "Wait, you can't just—" But Bill and Laurel stepped in, gently holding him back, exchanging a fearful glance at what might unfold next. Serena's heart hammered in her chest as she left the chaotic scene. She felt a heady mixture of relief and anger. This entire fiasco was humiliating and infuriating, but she couldn't afford to dwell on it. The mission was paramount. Elaine guided Serena to a smaller, less crowded security line. "I'll expedite you through," she murmured, "but we still have standard checks. Take off your shoes, remove electronic devices, you know the drill." Serena gave a terse nod and complied, feeling the eyes of the TSA officers on her. None of them spoke about her unusual situation, though Elaine whispered instructions to them. presumably clarifying that Serena was cleared. Meanwhile, an older officer gave Serena a sympathetic look, as if to say, "Sorry you had to go through that." Within minutes, Serena was through security, her backpack back on her shoulder. She kept glancing at her phone for updates from Agent Castillo. Nothing yet. She turned to Elaine, who was waiting quietly by the side. "Thank you. I appreciate your help." Elaine shrugged, her posture still tense. "It's part of the job. Sometimes we get calls from DHS for special circumstances, but rarely do we get such public conflicts." "I'm sorry for what you endured." Serena nodded, her anger still simmering. "But there was no time to vent. I have to get to gate B27. My flight leaves soon, and I need to locate someone first." Elaine handed over a small slip of paper. "That's my direct extension. If anything happens, call me. I'll back you up. Good luck." Serena managed a tight smile before turning and heading down the corridor to Concourse B. The overhead signs displayed directions to each gate, and she wove through the crowds, scanning every face. Her senses were on high alert for any potential threat or the suspect she'd been sent to monitor. A wave of travelers emerged from a newly arrived flight, momentarily blocking her path. She maneuvered around them, ignoring their confusion and exhaustion. She caught a glimpse of the tall, bearded man she'd seen earlier near the check-in area. He was walking briskly, eyes darting left and right, a large carry-on slung over one shoulder. The same prickle of suspicion from before tingled up her spine. She discreetly followed him, staying a dozen steps behind. He seemed unaware of her presence, or so she hoped. They passed a row of restaurants, busy with lunchtime crowds. Then a duty-free store filled with bright lights and the scent of perfume. The man continued on with purpose, eventually stopping near gate B27. Perfect. This was her flight's gate, which meant he might be the suspect. The overhead announcement crackled. "Majestic Skies Airlines Flight 2278 to Chicago is now boarding Group 1. Please have your boarding passes and ID ready." Serena moved to a nearby pillar, partly hiding behind it. She watched as the bearded man lingered by the windows, seemingly waiting for someone. She looked around but couldn't spot the second person. She needed to be closer. The boarding process continued, groups being called one by one. The bearded man made no move to line up. Instead, he pulled out his phone, glancing at it, then stared intently at the crowd around the gate. Serena decided to blend in. She joined the line for her boarding group, keeping him in her peripheral vision. A sense of urgency pressed on her. She needed to board before they closed the door. If the suspect had an accomplice, they might already be on the aircraft. Finally, her group was called. She inched forward, handing over her boarding pass to the gate agent, an older woman who smiled politely, scanning the pass. "No trouble here, thanks to Bill Carter's override." Relief. The gate agent waved her through. As she walked down the jet bridge, she risked a glance back. The bearded man was now standing in line, showing his pass to the agent. Serena's heart thumped. Good. If he boarded, she'd be in position to observe him on the plane. She entered the aircraft and found her seat, 19A, a window seat in economy. The plane was a Boeing 737 with cramped aisles and overhead bins nearly full, even at this stage of boarding. She shoved her backpack beneath the seat in front of her, then buckled up, all the while sneaking glimpses at the stream of passengers filing in. Sure enough, the bearded man eventually stepped onto the plane. He paused at row 12, checked his ticket, and slid into the window seat. He had placed his carry-on in the overhead bin, carefully stowing it. Serena wondered if it contained the device or data he was rumored to be transporting. Time crawled by as the remaining passengers boarded. A slight commotion occurred near the front, someone with an oversized bag trying to rearrange overhead space. Flight attendants bustled about, gently urging people to take their seats. Serena took a moment to text Agent Castillo on her secure device, letting him know she was on board and that a possible suspect had also boarded. She got a swift response. Remember to keep distance. Document any suspicious activity. Backup will meet you in Chicago. Good luck. Great. She'd have to handle the in-flight portion alone. The door finally closed, and the safety demonstration began. Serena pretended to watch the flight attendants, but her mind was locked on the suspect in row 12. She craned her neck, trying to see if he was fiddling with anything. Hard to tell from this angle. She decided to wait until the seatbelt sign was off after takeoff to move about. She gazed out the window, catching sight of the terminal building receding, remembering the humiliating ordeal with Gerald Mason. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over her. Part of her wanted to dwell on the blatant discrimination, but she forced herself to focus on the mission. One crisis at a time, she told herself. The aircraft taxied onto the runway, then roared to life for takeoff. Atlanta's skyline quickly shrank beneath them. Serena felt the usual pressure in her ears, the subtle shifting of weight as the plane ascended. Once they leveled off, the seatbelt sign pinged off, and the cabin filled with the low hum of passengers relaxing. Serena waited a few minutes, then stood, pretending to head for the lavatory. She passed row 12, sneaking a quick glance at the bearded man. He was staring at his phone, though in airplane mode it shouldn't be functional for calls. She noticed his phone was connected to a small external device via a cable, possibly a data transfer device. She lingered near the galley, pretending to wait in line for the lavatory, carefully peeking over her shoulder. The man's expression was tense, eyes darting around as if worried someone might see what he was doing. Serena's instincts screamed that he was indeed the suspect, or at least involved in something illicit. After a minute, she returned to her seat, formulating a plan. She'd wait for a quiet moment, perhaps, when the flight attendants were busy in the galley, and try to get closer. Alternatively, she could slip a small tracking device onto his carry-on. That would help if he escaped upon landing. However, that plan carried risks. She'd have to rummage in the overhead compartment in front of multiple watchful eyes. She decided it might be simpler to wait until the suspect visited the lavatory or otherwise left his seat. Meanwhile, she'd keep a keen eye on him. An hour passed. The flight attendants served drinks and tiny snacks. The bearded man didn't leave his seat. Instead, he kept fiddling with his phone and the external device, occasionally glancing out the window or scanning the aisle. Serena pretended to watch a movie on the seat back screen, but her eyes periodically flicked to row 12. Suddenly, the man reached up and pressed the call button for a flight attendant. Serena leaned forward, straining to overhear. A flight attendant with a neat bun and a crisp uniform approached him, leaning in to speak. She nodded, then turned toward the front of the plane. Moments later, she reappeared with a small glass of water. The suspect drank it, swallowed a pill from a blister pack, and then resumed his phone scanning. Possibly medication, or maybe something else. Serena sensed restlessness building in the cabin. Passengers stretched their legs or flipped through magazines. A bored toddler cried in the row behind her, quickly shushed by a tired parent. The flight attendants asked everyone to lower their window shades for rest, but the suspect kept his open. Then, out of the corner of her eye, Serena saw a flight attendant whisper something to the lead attendant. Both glanced at Serena and then away. Her adrenaline spiked. Had they recognized her from the fiasco at the gate, or had Mason contacted them somehow with a warning? She stayed still, trying not to appear alarmed. A moment later, the lead flight attendant approached her row, stooping down discreetly. "Miss Brooks?" she asked quietly. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Serena's heart pounded. She forced a courteous nod, unbuckling her seatbelt. She followed the attendant to the small galley area at the rear of the plane. The attendant's name tag read Rosalind. Rosalind's expression was sympathetic. She spoke in hushed tones, mindful of the other passengers. Ma'am, we received a note from ground staff. They said there was an incident during check-in. Something about you not being allowed to board. She raised her hands to show she meant no offense. I'm sorry. We're just confused, because obviously you're here now. The note suggested we keep an eye on you. Serena's jaw clenched. She wanted to roll her eyes at Mason's petty sabotage. Instead, she kept her composure. Yes, that was a misunderstanding which was sorted out by TSA. Is there a problem? Rosalind hesitated. Mr. Mason implied you might be a security risk, but all our updates from the TSA say you're clear. This discrepancy is unusual. Serena sighed. I assure you I'm not a risk. I'm just a traveler who had a booking error. If you check with your supervisor, Bill Carter, or TSA supervisor, Elaine Parker, they can confirm it. Rosalind nodded apologetically. I believe you, but I have to inform you that if there's any disturbance or sign of trouble, the captain has authority to divert. I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. Serena forced a polite smile. I'm just here to travel, nothing else. I appreciate the heads up, though. Rosalind touched Serena's arm gently, as if trying to offer comfort. Between you and me, I suspect Mason has some personal bias. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Our airline doesn't stand for discrimination. Gratitude flickered in Serena's eyes. Thank you. Rosalind nodded, then beckoned for her to return to her seat. Serena felt a pulse of relief that not everyone at Majestic Skies was like Mason. Still, the man had managed to poison the flight crew's perception with a note. She needed to remain on guard. Serena settled back in her seat, quietly updating her mission notes on her phone. She typed a coded message to Agent Castillo, describing the suspect's row and seat, the device, and his anxious behavior. She had no direct proof he was carrying contraband data, but she had strong suspicions. As she finished typing, the fasten seatbelt sign flashed on with a ding. A flight attendant announced that they'd encountered mild turbulence. The cabin vibrated gently as the plane descended to a slightly lower altitude. Passengers murmured, bracing themselves for a bumpy ride. Suddenly, the turbulence worsened. The plane shook enough that some overhead bins rattled open, and a man hissed in alarm as a small backpack tumbled onto his lap. The flight attendants asked everyone to remain seated, tension creeping into their voices. In row 12, the bearded man's overhead bin also popped open slightly. His carry-on teetered precariously on the edge. Serena watched intently, half hoping it would fall so she'd have an excuse to retrieve it. However, the man noticed and quickly stood to push it back in place. His face looked strained, not just from the turbulence, but also from an undercurrent of worry. He accidentally locked eyes with Serena for a split second, and she offered the bland smile of a random fellow traveler. He gave a curt nod, then hastily sat down. She wasn't sure if he suspected her. The turbulence continued for a harrowing 10 minutes, then finally subsided as the plane found a smoother altitude. A collective sigh of relief swept through the cabin. A flight attendant announced that they'd be resuming beverage service. Serena considered how best to confront the suspect without endangering other passengers. She couldn't just arrest him mid-flight. Her job was to observe, gather intelligence, and only intervene if absolutely necessary. The real plan was to coordinate with DHS in Chicago, who would intercept him discreetly at baggage claim or on the concourse. Yet her gut told her there might be more to this flight. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen in mid-air. Half an hour later, the suspect finally rose to use the restroom. He took his phone with him, leaving the carry-on behind in the overhead bin. Serena seized the opportunity. She quickly unbuckled, stood up, and discreetly opened the overhead compartment. Her heart pounded in her ears as she felt around for anything unusual. She found a small zipper pocket within the carry-on. Gently, she unzipped it. Her fingertips brushed against a hard, rectangular object, a portable hard drive, or something similar. She carefully tilted it, seeing an LED indicator. This could be the data. Before she could investigate further, a whisper from behind made her heart leap. It was Rosalind, the flight attendant. Her eyes widened in confusion. "Miss Brooks, what are you doing?" Serena froze. She realized how suspicious she looked, rummaging through another passenger's bag. She quietly shut the zipper. "Rosalind, I can explain." Rosalind raised a hand. "I should report this." Desperation flickered through Serena's mind. "Please, listen to me. I'm a federal agent working undercover. That bag belongs to a suspect who may have something dangerous. I know how this sounds, but you need to trust me." Rosalind's eyes darted to the overhead bin, then back to Serena. She looked skeptical, but something in Serena's face must have resonated with her. "Federal agent? Are you kidding?" Serena pulled out the black wallet again, flipping it open just enough for Rosalind to glimpse the DHS badge. "It's real. I can't risk letting him know who I am. Please keep quiet for everyone's safety." Rosalind's hand trembled slightly. She drew a shaky breath. "All right. I believe you," she whispered. "But I can't cover for you if I'm not asking you to break the law," Serena said. "Just pretend you didn't see anything. Let me handle it. If he grows suspicious, it could jeopardize a major investigation." Rosalind stood there, torn. Then she took a small step back. "Fine, but if he finds you at his bag, it's on you. I'll keep the other flight attendants away for now." She paused, eyes flickering with concern. "Please, be careful." Serena nodded gratefully. "Thank you." She turned back to the bag, carefully tucking the drive back in place. She zipped the compartment shut, closed the overhead bin, and slipped back into her seat. Moments later, she saw the suspect returning from the lavatory. He looked slightly pale, or maybe that was her imagination. He glanced at the overhead bin as though to check if it was still secure, then sat down. Serena exhaled. She'd confirmed her suspicion. He had some sort of storage device. If it contained stolen or dangerous data, that explained why DHS was so concerned. All she could do now was keep an eye on him and wait until Chicago. Her earlier run-in with discrimination was a footnote to the real threat. If only Mason realized he'd been obstructing a mission that had real stakes. For the remainder of the flight, Serena pretended to nap, one earbud in. In reality, her mind churned with possible scenarios. She kept a note open on her phone, timing the suspect's restroom visits and any interactions with the flight attendants. As they began the descent into Chicago, the captain announced they'd be landing in about 20 minutes. Cabin lights flickered back to full brightness. Passengers prepared for arrival, shutting off devices and raising seat backs. The suspect carefully packed away his external device and phone, glancing nervously at the overhead bin. Serena guessed he was relieved to see everything still intact. Her phone buzzed again. Another coded message from Agent Castillo. "We're in position at O'Hare. Gate arrival in 20 minutes. Provide seat number of suspect." She quickly typed back, "Row 12 window seat, bearded man, heavy coat." Next, she typed a final caution. "He has a portable drive in carry-on, possibly sensitive. Approach with caution." Then she set her phone to silent mode, stowed it in her backpack, and fastened her seatbelt. She was determined to see this through. The plane banked gently, giving her a glimpse of Chicago's sprawling grid below, the city lights piercing the dusk. Once on the ground, the plane taxied to the gate, and the usual frenzy of unbuckling began. Passengers stood, eager to grab their carry-ons and exit. Serena remained seated, watching. The suspect stood, hoisting his bag from the bin. She rose a moment later, leaving a few people between them. Everyone funneled into the aisle, shuffling forward. Serena's nerves buzzed. If the suspect sensed something off, he might run. But with so many people crammed in the aisle, it was nearly impossible to do so gracefully. She inched along behind a mother with 2 kids, trying to keep the suspect in sight. Finally, they stepped onto the jet bridge. The suspect walked briskly, weaving around slower passengers. Serena followed, ignoring the stares of others. Once inside the terminal, the suspect glanced around as if searching for someone. Meanwhile, Serena scanned the crowd, looking for Agent Castillo or other DHS operatives. She spotted a man in a dark suit standing near a coffee kiosk, holding a phone. When he noticed Serena, he subtly tapped his ear and agreed upon signal. Another agent was likely stationed near baggage claim. The plan was to let the suspect move freely, then corner him once he reached a less crowded area. But the suspect had other ideas. He caught sight of a tall, slender figure in a hooded sweatshirt near the windows. Exchanging a quick nod, they started walking together. Serena trailed behind, heart pounding. She recognized the second figure from mission briefings, a known courier for extremist groups. Serena tapped her phone 3 times, a prearranged code to let the nearby DHS agents know the suspect had an accomplice. The man in the dark suit left his kiosk, moving in a parallel direction. Another plainclothes agent emerged from a corner near the men's restroom, effectively flanking the suspects. They led the suspects into a wide corridor near the baggage claim escalators. Agent Castillo, a tall, broad-shouldered man, stepped into view. The suspects froze, realizing they were surrounded. The tall, slender courier backed away, reaching into his hoodie pocket as if for a weapon. Instantly, one of the DHS agents pinned him against the wall, securing his arm. The bearded man tried to bolt, but Serena was faster. She lunged forward, hooking her arm around his to prevent him from running. They tumbled to the floor, the carry-on bag skidding across the tiles. A startled crowd gasped, forming a wide circle around the altercation. Airport security officers rushed over, but once they saw the DHS badges, they kept the Gawkers at a distance. "I have him," Serena shouted, forcing the bearded man's hands behind his back. Agent Castillo stepped in, helping restrain him. The suspect's eyes, wild with fear, locked onto Serena's. "Who are you?" he gasped. Serena's expression hardened. Homeland Security. She patted him down, retrieving the portable drive from his bag. "And you just had a very bad day." They cuffed both suspects. The courier spat on the ground, cursing under his breath. Airport security quickly took over perimeter control. Cameras flashed journalists or random travelers, capturing the scene on phones. Serena's breath came in ragged bursts, adrenaline surging, relief and triumph flickered inside her. The mission was successful. They'd apprehended the suspects and the data. Innocent people wouldn't be at risk. In that moment, for just a second, Serena remembered the humiliation at the check-in counter, the scornful remarks from Gerald Mason. He had no clue that the passenger he'd tried to block was about to stop a genuine threat. Karma, she thought. Karma indeed. Fate has a way of twisting our expectations, and sometimes the people we doubt the most carry the greatest responsibility. In Serena's case, a single act of discrimination nearly derailed a critical operation. Yet her tenacity, training, and unwavering composure brought a dangerous suspect to justice. The very airline manager who labeled her a risk learned a swift, humiliating lesson when video footage and official statements revealed she was an undercover Homeland Security agent, exactly the person who safeguarded every life on that plane. Now, it's time to reflect on the power of standing firm against bias and the undeniable truth that appearances can deceive. If this story moved you, share it with a friend, leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more dramatic and inspiring stories like this one. Your support helps us bring you new, thought-provoking content every single week.